The first thing I heard was the wail of sirens cutting through the still morning air like knives. My hands were trembling, not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I already knew who had caused this. Karen, the HOA president. The woman who had been making my life a living hell ever since I moved into this neighborhood. But this time she had gone too far. I had just opened my garage to grab my tools when she came running down the street, screaming like she'd seen a crime in progress. Her face was red, her fingers stabbing the air toward me, and her voice was sharp enough to make the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "That's my car. He stole it. Arrest him." For a moment, I couldn't even process what she was saying. My car, the one my late father had worked years to buy and pass down to me, was sitting in my garage exactly where it had been for the past 2 years. It was the last thing I had of him, the last connection to the man who taught me how to drive, how to change oil, and how to never let anyone push me around. And now, this woman was pointing at it like I was some thief caught red-handed. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. I looked at her and tried to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. She was talking fast, spitting out accusations to the dispatcher. On her phone, she even gave them my address. Within minutes, the flashing lights came around the corner. 2 police cruisers stopped in front of my driveway, and the officers stepped out. The neighbors began peeking from behind curtains, and a couple even came outside to watch, whispering to each other like they were about to see a public execution. The first officer approached me cautiously, his hand resting on his holster. "Sir, step away from the vehicle," he said firmly. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. "This is my car," I managed to say, my voice shaking with both fear and rage. "I can prove it." But Karen wasn't about to let me speak. She stormed toward the officer, waving her hands dramatically. "He's lying. That car was listed for sale yesterday, and I bought it. He must have broken into the seller's house and taken it back." The officer looked confused, but kept his composure. "Ma'am, do you have any proof of purchase?" She fumbled with her phone, pretending to scroll through emails, but I could tell she had nothing. Meanwhile, I went into the house, grabbed the original title with my father's name and my own, along with years of insurance documents and registration. When I handed them over, the officer's eyes scanned the papers slowly. Then he turned to her. "Ma'am, this clearly shows the vehicle belongs to him." Her face twisted into something ugly, like she'd swallowed something bitter. "Those could be fake," she snapped. "He's known for doing shady things." She was making things up on the spot, desperate to hold on to whatever twisted narrative she'd built in her head. That's when I realized this wasn't just about the car. This was about control. Ever since I moved in, she had made it her mission to remind me I didn't belong here. I didn't mow the lawn the HOA way. I didn't paint my shutters approved colors. And now, this was her latest weapon. The officer finally stepped between us. "Ma'am, if you continue making false reports, you could be charged." But instead of backing down, she scoffed, turned to the neighbors, and said loudly, "Just wait until you see the kind of trouble this guy brings to our street." Then she stormed off, muttering about calling the board. The police left, after verifying everything, but the damage was done. Half the street had just watched me being accused of theft in my own driveway. The stares, the whispers, they all burned like acid in my gut. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the garage, running my hand over the smooth, cold hood of the car, remembering my dad's smile the day he handed me the keys. "Take care of her son," he had said. I had kept that promise. But now, someone was trying to turn that memory into something ugly. The next morning, a letter slid under my front door. No envelope, just a single sheet of paper with the HOA letterhead. It claimed I was under investigation for theft of community property and breach of neighborhood trust. It demanded I appear before the HOA board the following week or face fines and further legal action. My hands tightened around the paper until it crumpled. That's when something inside me shifted. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to make sure Karen regretted ever setting foot near my garage. If she wanted a war, I would give her one, and I'd do it by the book, just like my dad had taught me. I didn't have his strength, but I had his stubbornness. And when you push someone who has nothing left to lose, they push back hard. That night, I started digging. HOA bylaws, state property laws, public records, anything that could help me. I stayed up until 3 a.m., fueled by coffee and pure determination. By the time the sun came up, I had a plan. A plan that would not only clear my name, but would expose Karen for every shady thing she had ever done to this neighborhood. Because if there's one thing I learned from my father, it's that revenge is best served legal and public. And by the time I was done, Karen wouldn't just lose her fake claim on my car. She'd lose everything. I stood in my own driveway, hands still shaking from the absurd scene unfolding. The flashing lights from the patrol cars painted my garage in alternating red and blue, while neighbors peeked from behind curtains like they were watching some late-night drama. Karen stood there, chin high, eyes glinting with the satisfaction of someone who thought they had finally caught me. She kept pointing at my car, the one I'd worked years to afford, and telling the officer that she had just bought it that morning from a reputable seller. The officer glanced. Between us, his expression unreadable. "Sir," he said, "do you have proof of ownership?" I reached for my wallet, pulling out the registration and title papers. My hands weren't trembling from fear. They were trembling from rage. Because even before I handed him the documents, I could see Karen smirking, like she thought I'd forged them, like she believed her word alone could overpower the truth. "Here," I said, handing the papers over. The officer examined them, then walked over to check the VIN on the car. Karen's smugness wavered for a second, but she quickly recovered, saying, "It's easy to fake paperwork. I know what I bought." Her voice grated on me like nails on a chalkboard. I'd never seen someone so confident in their own lie. My daughter Lily was standing by the front door, her little hands clutching the frame as she watched. The fear in her big brown eyes cut through me. She was only 8, and already she'd had to deal with the constant chaos Karen caused in our neighborhood. I walked over to Lily, crouching so I could look her in the eye. "It's going to be fine, sweetheart," I whispered, even though I didn't fully believe it yet. After what felt like hours, the officer returned. "Ma'am, the VIN matches the registration. This is his car. There's no evidence to suggest otherwise." Karen's mouth fell open. "What? No, no, no. This is a mistake. You need to check again, ma'am," the officer said firmly. "You need to calm down." But Karen didn't calm down. She stormed toward me, jabbing her finger into the air like she was casting some sort of spell. "This isn't over. You can't just steal from people and think you'll get away with it." I didn't respond. Not because I was scared, but because I realized something. This wasn't just a random HOA dispute anymore. Karen was escalating. She wasn't just trying to bully me into compliance. She was trying to destroy my reputation. If she was willing to involve the police in a made-up story, what would she try next? That night, after the officers left and Karen was reluctantly dragged back to her own house by her husband, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold in my hands. My wife, Emily, sat across from me, her eyes hard. "She's gone." "Too far," Emily said. "I know," I replied. "She wants me out of here. She'll keep pushing until I break." Emily leaned forward. "So don't break. Push back." It was then the first real seed of revenge planted itself in my mind. I'd always tried to be civil, tried to avoid unnecessary drama, but Karen had made it clear there was no peace with her. She thrived on chaos. But what she didn't realize was that I had something she didn't: patience and a good memory. The next few days, I noticed Karen's behavior shift. She'd walk by my house slower than usual, sometimes taking pictures of my property with her phone. She'd smile at me in this sly, almost victorious way, as if she knew she'd unsettled me. But inside, I was calm. I was observing, waiting, and then, one evening, I got my first big break. I was walking back from the mailbox when I overheard Karen on the phone in her driveway. She wasn't even trying to be discreet. She was telling someone about a new car she had bought, a luxury SUV. The way she described it made me pause, because it sounded suspiciously familiar. Too familiar. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I took a walk past her house, and there it was, sitting pretty in her driveway. A glossy black SUV with a temporary paper plate. Something about it felt off. And when I say off, I mean really off. I pulled out my phone, took a discreet photo, and sent it to my friend Mark, who worked as a mechanic and had some contacts in the used car world. A few hours later, he called me back with something that made my pulse quicken. You might want to hear this," Mark said. "That car, it's reported stolen." I froze, standing there in the dark of my backyard. Stolen. Karen, the same woman who called the cops on me for supposedly stealing my own car, was driving around in an actual stolen vehicle. A slow, almost dangerous smile spread across my face, because now I had her, and I wasn't going to waste this opportunity. The officers stepped closer, their eyes scanning between me, the car, and the furious woman pacing in the driveway like she owned the world. My mother's voice trembled as she asked, "What is going on? Why are the police here?" But I could barely answer. I kept my eyes on Karen, her smug little smirk curling as if she had already won this war. The lead officer cleared his throat. "Sir, she claims this vehicle was stolen from her earlier today." My jaw dropped. From her, I could feel my pulse pounding in my temples. "That's impossible. I bought this car 3 weeks ago. I have the title, the registration, everything." Karen jumped in, her voice sharp and dripping with fake concern. "He's lying. I just paid cash for it yesterday. I have my own paperwork at home. He must have broken in and taken it while I was out." I laughed, but it wasn't from humor. It was the laugh of a man trying not to lose control. "So you're saying you left your garage open, and I magically stole a car, parked in my own locked garage? You hear yourself." The officer raised his hand to calm us. "Sir, can you retrieve your documents to verify ownership?" I didn't even hesitate. "Absolutely." I walked into the house, grabbed the manila folder from my desk drawer, and returned. My hands shook, not from fear, but from rage. I handed over the title, registration, and bill of sale. The officer took his time examining each piece, his brows furrowing. Karen kept interjecting, trying to cast doubt. "You know, criminals are getting clever. Forging papers. Printing fake documents." "That's enough," the officer finally said, his voice firm. He looked back at my paperwork, then at Karen. "Ma'am, these documents check out. The VIN number matches the vehicle. This car belongs to him." Karen's face twisted into a mask of pure disbelief. No, you're wrong." "Ma'am," the second officer interrupted, "if you cannot provide proof of your claim, right now, this conversation is over." Karen's lips trembled. She glanced toward her house, like she was calculating how quickly she could fake something before the officers caught on. But she must have seen in their faces that it was too late. I folded my arms, my anger still boiling. "You just tried to accuse me of a felony in front of my mother and half the neighborhood. You realize that, right? Karen stepped back, suddenly. Defensive. I thought it was mine. There's been a mix-up. A mix-up. My voice was low, but it carried weight. You screamed at the top of your lungs that I was a thief. You called 911. You tried to have me arrested over something you knew wasn't true. The officers exchanged a glance. Then one of them said, "Sir, you have every right to press charges for filing a false police report and harassment." Karen's eyes widened, and for the first time that day, she looked scared. "Wait, we don't need to take it that far. I'm sure we can resolve this neighbor to neighbor." I stared at her for a long moment, my chest still heaving. I wanted so badly to end her games right then and there, to teach her that there are consequences for humiliating people just to feed her ego. But I also wanted to make sure whatever I did next would crush her without giving her a way out. So I took a deep breath and said, "No, this won't be resolved neighbor to neighbor. You've crossed the line for the last time." Her eyes darted to the officers, but they said nothing. They were letting me decide. I didn't press charges that second, not because she didn't deserve it, but because I had something else in mind. Something that would make her regret ever stepping foot near my garage. As the officers left, my mom put her hand on my arm. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I nodded, though I wasn't. My heart was still pounding, my mind already working through the next steps. Karen had made the biggest mistake of her life, and she didn't even know it yet. From her front window, I saw her staring at me, still defiant, but with a flicker of uncertainty now. Good. Let her wonder. Let her feel the weight of not knowing what I'd do next. Because I was going to make sure that the next time she thought about messing with me, she'd remember exactly how it ended for her, and that it wouldn't just be her reputation that got smashed this time. The next morning, the air felt heavy, like the calm before a storm. I was sipping my coffee in the kitchen when I noticed flashing blue and red lights reflecting against the living room wall. My stomach dropped. I put the cup down and rushed to the window. 2 police cars were parked outside my house, and Karen was standing next to them, talking animatedly, waving her arms in my direction. I couldn't hear her words, but I could read her lips well enough to know she was making accusations. My heart pounded, not because I had anything to hide, but because I knew the HOA president had the ability to twist any situation into a nightmare. I stepped outside, keeping my voice calm, as 2 officers approached me. "Sir, we've received a report of stolen property," one of them said, his tone polite but firm. Karen's smug smile widened behind them, like she had already won. I explained again that the car in my garage was mine. I showed them the title, the registration, even the insurance papers, all with my name clearly printed. But Karen stepped forward, clutching a crumpled piece of paper she claimed was her bill of sale. The officers looked between us, clearly confused. "She says the vehicle identification number matches the car she bought yesterday," one of them said. My jaw clenched as Karen nodded rapidly, playing the role of the innocent victim. "He stole it right out of my driveway last night," she insisted, her voice breaking into fake sobs. I woke up and it was gone, and now I see it in his garage. I couldn't believe it. She was standing there, lying through her teeth, trying to turn my life upside down just because she couldn't stand that I wouldn't bow to her HOA rules. I motioned for the officers to follow me into the garage. I pointed out the small differences: the custom wheels, the leather interior stitching, even a tiny scratch on the rear bumper that had been there since I bought it. Then I showed them the VIN directly from the dashboard and matched it to my documents. It was an exact match, proving it was mine. Karen's face flushed red, but she didn't back down. "He must have changed the plates and reprinted papers," she cried, her voice shrill. One of the officers exchanged a look with me, clearly starting to see through her act. "Ma'am, that's a serious accusation," he said, his tone losing some of its earlier patience. Do you have the keys to this car? Karen hesitated for a fraction of a second, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a key fob. She pressed it, and nothing happened. No beeping, no lights flashing. The silence was louder than any siren. The officer raised an eyebrow. "Looks like this key doesn't belong to this vehicle," he said flatly. For a moment, I thought the nightmare might be over, but Karen wasn't finished. She started shouting, calling me a thief, claiming I had hacked the car somehow. The neighbors had gathered now, watching from their lawns, whispering to each other. I could feel their eyes on me, judging, wondering if maybe there was some truth to her madness. The officers finally told Karen to step back, warning her that filing a false police report was a crime. She mumbled something about calling her lawyer and stomped away, still throwing me dirty looks over her shoulder. I went back inside, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. This was more than a petty feud now. She had tried to involve the law, to smear my name in front of the community. And I knew her type. If she didn't win this time, she'd just try again in another way. That evening, I found an anonymous post in the HOA community forum accusing me of stealing from neighbors and calling me a danger to the neighborhood. It didn't take a genius to figure out who had posted it. The comments underneath were split, some defending me, others demanding I be removed from the HOA. I sat in my living room long after dark, staring at that post, my mind spinning. My first instinct was to ignore it, to let the truth speak for itself. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that staying silent was exactly what Karen wanted. She wanted me isolated, humiliated, and pushed out of the neighborhood. She wanted to destroy me piece by piece until I gave up and left. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. That night, I started making calls. I spoke to a friend who worked in private investigations, someone who owed me a favor. I asked him to look into Karen, her finances, her history, her previous neighborhoods. I wanted to know everything. If she was going to try to ruin me, I needed ammunition of my own. I didn't want petty revenge. I wanted something she couldn't recover from, something that would expose her for the fraud she was. As I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to my friend agree to take the job, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't afraid of her anymore. I was angry, not the kind of anger that made you yell or break things, but the cold, steady kind that planned and waited. Karen thought she could play with fire without getting burned. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. It was almost midnight when I finally sat down on the couch, exhausted from another long day of paperwork and phone calls. The past week had been nothing but chaos. Police reports, insurance claims, HOA letters filled with veiled threats, and Karen's constant parade of drama in front of the neighbors. I thought maybe tonight would be a rare, quiet night, but I was wrong. A loud knock pounded on my door, followed by Karen's shrill voice echoing down the street. "Come out, thief. Stop hiding behind your walls." My heart sank, but it quickly turned into anger. I wasn't about to give her another free show, but the pounding continued, so I opened the door. She stood there, hair a tangled mess, eyes blazing like she hadn't slept in days. Behind her, 3 of her HOA cronies stood with their arms crossed. "Clearly here to intimidate me. Are you going to give it back, or do I have to make you?" She sneered. I told her firmly that the car was mine. The documents proved it, and she needed to stop harassing me. But she stepped closer, so close I could smell the cheap wine on her breath, and whispered, "You have no idea who you're messing." With that line sent a chill down my spine, not because I feared her power, but because it made me realize something deeper. Karen wasn't acting alone. She had the entire HOA board under her thumb, and they were willing to bend rules to protect her. The next morning, I confirmed my suspicion. I got a call from a neighbor, Tom, who quietly told me he'd overheard a board meeting last night Their Zoom call? They were plotting to fine me $500 a day until I returned the car. My blood boiled. This wasn't just a personal grudge anymore. It was a coordinated attack. And in that moment, I decided I was done playing defense. I started documenting everything. Every word, every threat, every ridiculous letter they slid under my door. I even set up a security camera facing my driveway, capturing every time Karen walked by and took photos of my car. One day, she even pretended to trip near my driveway, hoping to claim damages. But the footage caught her looking around first, then dramatically falling like a bad soap opera actress. That alone was worth saving for later, but Karen wasn't letting up. A few days later, I found deep scratches down the side of my car, the same car she claimed was hers. My fists clenched as I looked at the security footage. And there she was again, 2 a.m., hoodie pulled over her head, dragging her keys along my paint with a satisfied smirk. I took the footage straight to the police, thinking this would be the turning point. But the officer's words stung. "We can take a report, but given the situation, you might want to handle this civilly." Civilly, Karen had crossed into criminal territory, and they wanted me to play nice. That night, I sat in my garage, staring at my damaged car, rage and helplessness swirling inside me. That's when I remembered my cousin, Jake. Jake wasn't just family. He was a property lawyer and one who loved a good fight. I called him, explained everything, and by the end of the conversation, I could hear the excitement in his voice. "They've dug themselves a deep hole," he said. "Let's bury them in it." The plan wasn't immediate. It would take patience. We began gathering not just my evidence, but also digging into the HOA's history. And what we found was, Explosive Karen had a long record of false complaints, personal vendettas, and using HOA funds for neighborhood improvements that just happened to be upgrades to her own property. The deeper we dug, the uglier it got. And the best part, we had paper trails, witnesses, and videos. But while we prepared, Karen doubled down. She began sending out flyers to the neighborhood, calling me a dangerous car thief and warning people not to trust me. Kids stopped riding their bikes near my driveway. Neighbors looked away when I waved, and I realized she was trying to isolate me from the community. That hurt more than I wanted to admit. I'd lived here for years, and now I was the villain. In everyone's eyes, one evening, my teenage niece came to visit. She took one look at me and said, "You look tired, Uncle, like you've been fighting a battle alone." That's when I realized I had been. But not anymore. I told her everything. And she hugged me, saying, "Then let's win this." That small moment of support gave me back the fire I needed by the end of the week. Jake had the legal documents ready, not just a lawsuit for defamation and harassment, but also a formal complaint to the state HOA regulatory body. And we weren't stopping there. The evidence of her vandalism was going to the local news. If Karen wanted a war, she was about to get one. I remember lying in bed that night, hearing her laugh faintly from across the street as she hosted yet another wine-fueled gathering with her bored friends. They thought they'd already won. They thought I was cornered. But they didn't know the storm I was about to bring. And when the first legal notice was served to her the next morning, in full view of the entire street, the look on her face was worth every sleepless night. She wasn't laughing anymore. By Monday morning, the whole neighborhood was buzzing with whispers. The HOA board tried to act like nothing happened, but word travels fast, especially when Karen's voice could be heard from 3 streets over during her meltdown. My kids were quieter than usual at breakfast, still shaken from watching the police swarm our driveway. I tried to keep things light, but inside, I was burning. I wasn't just going to let this die down and fade away. No, this was going to be the turning point. Around 10 a.m., I got a call from Officer Daniels, the one who had seemed sympathetic during the whole incident. He said, "Hey, just thought you should know. she's doubling down. She filed a formal complaint with the station saying you've been stalking her car for weeks. She even brought in a witness from the HOA board to back it up. I had to sit down. The audacity of it all left me speechless for a moment. A witness? Who? I asked. Daniel sighed. Mark Preston. My stomach twisted. Mark was the HOA vice president and also one of Karen's biggest supporters. It all made sense now. They weren't just trying to harass me. They were building a case to push me out of the neighborhood completely. I spent the rest of the morning digging through my own security footage, looking for anything that could expose them. Every clip from the past month showed the same thing: me minding my own business. Karen occasionally lurking by my driveway, pretending to walk her dog while peeking into my garage. Then I found gold, a video from 2 weeks ago showing Karen actually walking right up to my garage door, pressing her face against the glass panels and trying the handle. It wasn't just nosiness, it was obsession by the afternoon. I called my lawyer, Mr. Harris. I think we're past the point of just letting this slide, I told him. He agreed and told me to forward all the footage. If she's making false police reports and now trespassing on your property, this could get serious, he said. Serious was exactly what I wanted it to get. Later that evening, I decided to take a walk just to clear my head. Halfway down the street, I spotted Karen in her driveway, talking to 2 other board members. Her arms were flailing, her voice loud enough for me to hear fragments. He's dangerous. He's unstable. We need him out before something happens. My blood boiled. I wanted to shout right then and there, but I knew I had to be smarter. So I kept walking, pretending I didn't hear, but my mind was already plotting. That night, I sent an anonymous email to every homeowner in the neighborhood, attaching the video of Karen snooping at my garage. The subject line was simple: "This is who runs your HOA." Within minutes, replies started flooding in. Some were shocked, some were furious, and a few admitted they'd had similar run-ins with her. One neighbor even sent me their own footage, Karen trying to peek through their kitchen window. The puzzle pieces were falling into place. The next morning, Karen came stomping up my driveway, red-faced and fuming. "You think you're clever," she hissed. "You have no idea who you're messing with." I smiled calmly. "I do, Karen. I think everyone does now." She glared at me, muttered something under her breath, and stormed away. It was the first time I saw fear in her eyes. That told me I was getting close. But I knew this wasn't over. The HOA emergency meeting was scheduled for Friday night, and that's where the real showdown would happen. My plan was ready, and if it worked, Karen's reign over the neighborhood would crumble in front of everyone. The garage door creaked open slowly, sunlight spilling across the driveway like it was announcing the start of a new day. But for me, it was the end of something bigger. The police cars had long since left, their red and blue lights just a memory. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, curiosity thick in the air. Karen's house stood quiet now, the blinds shut tight. No more yelling, no more pounding on my door. It should have felt like victory, but instead, it felt like the calm after a hurricane. Everything still, yet broken. My wife, Emily, stood beside me, her hand slipping into mine, the warmth grounding me after everything we'd been through. The car, my car, sat in the garage, freshly detailed, looking like it had the day I bought it. The difference now was that it wasn't just a car anymore. It was a symbol, a reminder that I had been wronged, humiliated, and pushed, but I had fought back. And I had won. Karen wasn't outside to hurl insults. She wasn't calling the cops again because she couldn't. The restraining order saw to that. After her arrest, the court made it clear she was to have no contact with me or my family, and she was barred from coming within 50 feet of my property. HOA or not, her power had been ripped away. For weeks, she'd made my life hell, painting me as a thief, a liar, a criminal in my own neighborhood. She called 911 so many times, I stopped counting. And each time, she added more lies, more drama, more venom. But in the end, it was her own arrogance that destroyed her. The moment she screamed at the officers and tried to physically stop them from checking the car's VIN was the moment she dug her own grave. The car was mine. The paperwork was real, and her brand new purchase didn't exist. She'd never bought it in the first place. The HOA tried to save face, of course. They sent a formal apology letter that felt more like a legal formality than an actual expression of regret. But I didn't need their words. I had something better: proof. I'd compiled every false claim, every aggressive note Karen had left on my door every time she trespassed to peek into my garage, and I handed it all to my lawyer. Karen wasn't just facing criminal charges for filing false reports. She was now staring down a civil lawsuit. The damages for harassment, defamation, and emotional distress were going to hit her harder than she ever imagined. And I wasn't doing it out of spite. I was doing it for closure. For justice, the next HOA meeting was something straight out of a movie I didn't even plan to attend, but Emily convinced me. "They need to see you," she said. "They need to see you're not afraid anymore." So I walked in, calm and collected, while whispers filled the room. The president cleared his throat, tried to move on with the agenda, but I stopped him. I stood there and told them exactly what Karen had done. Every lie. Every time she called the police on me for no reason. The humiliation my family had endured. I could see the shame creeping into their faces as they realized they had blindly believed her, enabling her behavior because it was easier than questioning her. And when I was done, I didn't raise my voice, didn't threaten anyone. I just said, "Never again." The room was silent. And in that silence, I knew they understood. Karen's house went up for sale 2 weeks later. Whether she moved by choice or was pushed out, I didn't care. What mattered was that she was gone. The day the moving truck pulled up, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, Emily by my side. It wasn't gloating, it was relief. A slow, deep breath I'd been holding for months, finally released. We watched her storm around, barking orders at the movers, her face twisted in the same anger she'd worn from day one. But this time, it didn't touch me. I didn't feel intimidated. I felt free. The neighborhood changed after that. People waved when they walked by. Some even apologized, admitting they'd believed Karen's lies at first, but now saw the truth. I didn't hold it against them. Gossip has a way of poisoning people before they even realize they've swallowed it. Over time, things got back to normal. I worked on my car in peace, took my kids for drives without looking over my shoulder, and enjoyed barbecues without someone calling the cops because the smoke was a nuisance. One evening, months later, I was out in the garage polishing the car's hood when my son came in. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Dad, you didn't let her win." His words stopped me cold. He was right. I hadn't let her win. And more importantly, I'd shown him and my daughter that you don't have to fight with fists or anger to stand your ground. You can fight with truth, patience, and persistence. And when the time is right, you can make sure the people who tried to break you never get the chance again. The car gleamed under the warm light, the deep shine reflecting not just my face, but everything I'd been through. It wasn't just metal and paint anymore. It was a piece of my story, a reminder that justice isn't always loud or flashy. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just the sound of your garage door closing on a peaceful evening, knowing the battle is over and you came out on top. That night, as Emily and I sat on the porch, the sun setting in streaks of gold and pink, she leaned her head on my shoulder. "Feels like the neighborhood's ours again," she said softly. And I smiled because she was right. It did. And no one, especially not Karen, was ever going to take that from us again.